Artificial intelligence is reinventing business as we speak. You can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really, it's a no-brainer. Join Cognitive Path founders Geoff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they chat with AI experts about the latest ideas, trends, and technologies that are creating the future of business today. This is No Brainer.
Hey, this is Greg Verdino. Welcome to No Brainer. I am here, as always, with my long-suffering co-host, my friend, my partner, my brother from another mother, Geoff Livingston. How are you, Geoff?
Mr. Greg, how are you? Apparently, I'm Greg Verdino too, by the captions.
Fortunately, that doesn't show, I don't believe, on the video, but that would be really confusing. Like we don't look enough alike that we've got the wrong name tags and all of that. But
I feel bad for you because you look like me.
it feels bad for you because you look like me. All right, but it's not all about looks, Geoff. It is sometimes about what's inside the brains. And as always, we have a good episode with some good brains to address a whole bunch of interesting ideas about AI. Before we do that, though, I would like to remind everybody, because you may forget in between episodes, if you do enjoy what you hear, what you see, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, to like, to follow, to love, to link, to share, to do all that kind of good stuff. We appreciate your support. We appreciate you helping to get the word out to help us reach people who might get value out of our content. So let's get into some of that valuable content. Geoff, who's with us today?
All right. Well, we have Stephen and Nina Moss, the co-founders of Mendit.ai. Now, I met this couple at Voice in AI conference. They are dynamic, and they are addressing one of the biggest problems that has arisen as a result of AI, which is marketers using it for maybe a nefarious cause, or perhaps in a way it's a little slim shady. And that is to create a bunch of content that perhaps pollutes ecosystems. And so with that in mind, I'd like to welcome Nina and Stephen. How are you guys?
Really good. Thank you, Greg, for the warm intro. We're so excited to be on the podcast. We're even excited about the synthetic content that's taking over our platforms and taking over how we buy, how we navigate the digital landscape. And with that, Stephen, are you excited?
I'm super excited as well, and thanks for looking into it too. Really looking forward to get into the synthetic content issues.
Yeah, for sure. And I was really interested when we did that interview at the summit about how you guys had latched onto this as an issue. It was almost like you were ahead of the game, because as we are rolling into 2025 and everybody's starting to come out with their trends, we just had to see one of the bigger trends that's emerging and will continue to emerge this year is, unfortunately, negative voices that the pundit base are calling AI slop. And Handley most notably put out her trends for 2025 from the marketing side, which basically said that content writing emails, website content, and of course reviews, which you guys focus a lot on, that AI slop isn't going to work, and that marketers are going to have to inspire real content. And then on a larger macro scale, CES, one of the big trends that TechCrunch noted was that there's a lot of brands just really kind of throwing AI everywhere, and marketers using AI everywhere, and it's sloppy. And can you tell us why this is happening in your mindsets?
100%. First of all, I absolutely adored Anne's list of in and out and what to look out for. We're seeing a lot of heart being taken out of campaigns and content and reviews and everything that's used to create social engagement out there. But the good thing is people are starting to notice it. We're starting to notice how AI works and how AI is written. And we can easily say now, wait a minute, this review is written by AI. This Reddit post is written by AI. So there's a lot of scrutiny going on, which I am incredibly grateful for. The big thing is, when AI rolled out, it rolled out aggressively. It rolled out guns blazing, big promises. You can save money, you can eliminate costs, you can have strong campaigns that are customized to your users, that learn by how your users are interacting with your campaign. And it's like big money for pennies on the dollars. Who would want to buy that? It was a huge promise. But the social impact wasn't taken into account. The
Yep.
delegation of trust wasn't taken into account, the eroding of trust, and also content fatigue. We have so much getting pushed our way, specifically with Christmas. It was incredible to see all of the things that buy this and buy that, and this is great. And even for people that opted to have a minimalist Christmas, if you would go on social media, you'd still feel like you are missing out just because there was all of this amazing stuff practically tailored to you that you were supposed to buy or expected to buy.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. I think what you're pointing to there's obviously a lot of good that can come out of AI, both in terms of productivity and efficiency. And if you think broadly more out, outside of marketing and all of that, obviously the ways that our ability, especially with machine learning, less so with generative AI, to be able to crunch massive data sets, deal with wicked problems, stuff like that. But to the extent I can, like the way you pointed out that some of the negative implications have not been fully thought through. The implications for trust, for content overload, content fatigue, things like that. And it seems like for those of us who have been in and around marketing for a while, those kinds of considerations tend to lag the initial sort of hype cycle, right? Where everyone gets really excited about the opportunity and don't really think so much about what are the negative implications of this, right? So you end up in a world where, brands have always both had to deal with on the negative side and in some cases have been, I guess, bad actors when it comes to fake reviews, right? Sometimes fake reviews are a narrative attack. Sometimes brands are paying for fake reviews to amp themselves up, right? Now, all of a sudden, social makes it possible to do that at virtually unlimited scale, right? Is that essentially the essence of the problem we're talking about?
it is. So, what AI is doing and what people are using AI for is maximizing how they are featured on platforms by the algorithm. You would see the algorithm pushing products with 5,000 five-star reviews, 10,000 five-star reviews, and those reviews aren't scrutinized. We're not putting the question of, is it quantity over quality? What is the content of these reviews and what value do they bring to a potential buyer, a potential consumer? So a big question now is, even if you have content that's good and written with your heart and thought out, or a thought out review, will the algorithm pick up on it and push it upwards? The big
Mm.
thing about fraudulent reviews is it's pennies on the dollars. Anyone can buy reviews and post them on their business. A restaurant, a shop, a fashion platform, even a dentist's office or a doctor's office. And I think that's where the morality comes into question. Should these services be separate from services that are tailored to entertain or to provide a low cost meal, for example? If you go to a restaurant and see a rat on the floor, you walk out. But if
Well,
you
there was that one time we went to remember that restaurant we went to, Craig? Was that no, it was me and my buddy Joe Newman. There was literally a mouse on the floor. And we're like, we were like, holy God. We called the waitress. We're like, hey, there's this mouse right here. And she said, oh, that's terrible. Let me get the manager. They literally had cleaning that day. They had the service come in and they killed the mouse. It was in
But
their
did you
restaurant.
stay and finish your meal? That's the important question.
Well, of course,
Of
we're
course.
dudes. We're like, whatever.
you don't want to be rude,
Oh my God. Well, we don't care. We're like, food. Real quick question though. Stephen, what's the technological answer for this? I know this is a lot of what Mendit does. So we have a cloud of crap coming at us. And we also have these platforms now that clearly are going to go free speech and not respond to the amount of garbage out there, unless it's blatant. But it's pretty much in their interests. It seems like to say they have so many accounts and so many people responding. What's the technological answer?
The interesting bit about machine learning in general is that it allows you to very quickly optimize a number, right? And in this case, the number is how often are you kind of being positioned in the top position for a recommendation system. So you can basically train your model to learn how to write all sorts of reviews so that you can pretty much guarantee top positioning. Now, the thing is, when you look at how much it costs to buy a review, right, you can spend about, basically it's about $5 or so per review. So you don't need to spend that much. You can spend like $500 and pretty much guarantee top positioning and recommendations forever. That's something essentially a brand wouldn't have to pick. But essentially, because you do this, a brand doesn't have to pay ads, right? They don't have to kind of do the traditional marketing channels, and they're more effective than brands that do go through kind of traditional marketing channels. So we think that what people are going to notice is that ads are just not going to be as effective. In terms of how you detect that, though, it kind of works the same way in reverse, right? So because you train AI to make sure that you end up in a good position, you can also train AI to when that happens. And that's what we're able to do. And it turns out there's some linguistic properties of text. When you share an opinion, maybe you have a bad day. Maybe you don't like a type of product. Maybe you have a bad experience with flashlights and let's go forward, right? But then the accounts that are being kind of used to only influence a opinion, what they do is they will always share the exact same linguistic properties. It's always 5-star reviews. It's always 3-star reviews that share balanced reviews. It's always kind of a consistent type of speech and type of discussion.
So are you, I guess, from a technological standpoint, then, is it really about pattern recognition? You're looking for an instance where some large number of 5-star reviews that all kind of sound this way all hit essentially around the same time, right?
Yes, pretty much. They sound the same way. Interestingly enough, when we think about sound the same way, we also think about the kind of usage of other ways to communicate. So we've seen some reviews that sound the same way, but use emojis so that they would be able to kind of bypass word level filters. Some reviews, again, it's basically a 1-word review, but it's 1 word in multiple languages. So they kind of cycle for languages to bypass, again, word level filters.
The alarming thing is that we're dealing with manufactured identities. Profiles are
Right.
legitimate. They have photos generated with AI, thought generated with AI, and the only way to capture them is measure intent. Our tech can do that. If we look at a piece of text, we can say the intent behind this is to influence, manipulate, enrage. That's why a lot of content online is made to enrage you, because that's what's successful. So after doom scrolling for an hour, it's
Right.
furious.
Absolutely.
I have a teenager at home for that, though.
Doom scrolling IRL. It's interesting because when you're talking about that, I'm now thinking about one of the many, pardon me, stupid things Zuckerberg is doing right now with his platform. There was before the story about how they've scraped all of this sort of copywritten content without permission, which was after the story about how they were going to do away with content moderation. There was a story about how they were launching AI generated profiles to try to increase engagement on the platform, and which seems like a stupid idea to begin with, but apparently somebody has already interacted with and jailbroke one of those, which was like a grandpa persona, and got the grandpa persona, I don't know what its name was, Cliff or whatever, to say essentially that he has been designed to manipulate you using the kinds of tactics that are used by cults and authoritarians and also grandparents to get you to coerce your love and loyalty and affection and make you feel comfortable sharing things you might not otherwise share. So it's almost like these networks are designing their systems to be even worse than they were before with regard to deceiving personalities and deceiving profiles and stuff. How does that make things even more complicated?
It's complicated because, in a way, they're trying to make manufactured identity seem like a good thing. It's good to have an AI influencer that influences what you buy, or it's good to have an AI moderator that sneaks through the conversation. But they're not saying how they're going to label it. How are they going to disclose? We think that the ethical thing to do is put a label on it. This is an AI person. This is AI generated. So people know what they're dealing with. It's like we're in the middle of a social experiment that kind of went terribly wrong. And people,
Nina, it's an interesting idea, and I've heard others express this kind of thing, that this entire generative AI revolution is a giant social experiment. That no one knows quite how it's going to turn out, where it's headed, what the impact is going to be on humanity, but we're just kind of charging along, and we're the guinea pigs.
We're letting the bodies hit the floor, right?
Right?
100%. And it's because we're social people. That's what we do. We like to socialize. We like to participate in conversations, but not knowing how again, I go back to the algorithm. Who decides what you see on your phone every day? Who decides who's in the chat room with you or who sees your posts? It's incredibly scary. But I think the conversations are heading in the right direction in terms of we need to understand how the algorithm works. Transparency is needed and AI needs to be explainable. That's at the core of our company, of what we do. We explain everything we do. There's no black boxes. There's no opacity. And I think a lot of the big conversations that are heading our way are these big AI models. And everybody knows who I'm talking about. What data was used to train those models? Was it people's Instagram feed? Was it movies?
Oh, yeah.
Was it pop culture information? Stuff that should never be on the table to train your models. So there's a lot at risk, a lot at stake, but people are standing up and saying, wait a goddamn minute.
Yeah, I do think that there's a come to Jesus moment that's going to happen for these social networks, and in particular Meta. We all know, and it was a big deal long ago, it was 15 years ago when they launched that first Beacon program, that when you use their content, you're uploading photos and you're giving them a use license. And
Yeah.
so obviously they actually legally can train their AI on your imagery, and you gave it to them when you volunteered your data, but that's going to come back. But back to the larger issue of AI and generated content and how it's going to affect the way we interact online. I think to your point, Nina, there are good uses, there are explainable uses, right? I think there are actually uses where brands encourage you to use AI to help craft your review, right? Like to help you voice your thought, understanding that perhaps not everybody is as eloquent as they'd like to be. And that's a good example of raising the bottom a little bit.
Mhm.
I don't buy the full inherently view that AI slop is going out. It's going to be completely passe. And I think that to label all AI as slop is a mistake as well. I don't think that's her intent, to be candid, but it can be interpreted that way if you wanted to be aggressive about it. How do you see AI generated content continuing to be used well or thoughtfully or welcome into the larger content ecosystem?
I'll take the first stab and then hand it to you, Steven. So AI has its uses. It's amazing at refining a thoughtful note, an email, putting your words in a way that still sound like you, but just editing. So I think if you use an AI as an assistant to help you curate and help you elevate your message, it could be incredibly powerful. I think it depends how much effort you're willing to put into it. If you're happy to spam people with AI content that's empty, vapid, with no personal hint or no personal branding or no emotion whatsoever, and you are happy as an individual or as a company to wear that sign of AI content and that's it, no bells, no whistles, that's fine. People might want to experiment with that. It's very difficult to not experiment with that. That's what's shoved up our throats every day. Everybody is saying the only way to do sales is spam, spam, spam.
Nina, you can curse on this podcast.
And you're telling me now I've been sweating over here.
Steven.
I mean, from my side, I'm just going to echo the exact same stuff, right? When you kind of look at it, if one person, right, if you have some early adopters that are using AI to scale up their cold outreach and their content marketing, people are not going to notice, right? There is some level of ability to do that. But when that becomes part of your kind of your standard playbook, all of a sudden you got hundreds of emails and you talk to all of them. What kind of sound the same and sold pretty much the same things. And it's just easy to get overwhelmed by just the volume of AI. And that's, from my perspective, that's why I think that people are calling AI slop. It's not necessarily the thoughtful use of AI to kind of edit an email to sound nicer or to kind of make yourself a little bit more productive. It's the scaled use of AI to reach like as many people as possible, as best as possible, without a lot of kind of guidance behind it, right? And I think in the long term, what we're going to see is people are just not going to interact with AI that is just kind of blatantly targeting everything out there. I mean, sure, you can scale up your cold outreach. You can reach a lot of people and you can go to as many inbox as you can. But at the same time, if everybody does that, then you're not going to have a lot of genuine human connection. I think it's just not going to be as effective going forward, and are going to recognize that, and they're going to try and refine how AI is being used. And what that's going to look like, who knows? I think that's where we're headed.
I do have one thing to say. With social interactions and posting content and interacting with people online, that's a muscle that we have that's been forged, and it's authentically our own. If you start using AI as a crutch, just like in school when you use a calculator to do your math instead of doing yourself, that muscle erodes. That's why you get people that you met 5 years ago and they were a social butterfly and they were amazing at just carrying this dialogue and make you feel comfortable. And you meet them 5 years later and they just don't know how to act socially. They don't know how to say. They're on their phone trying to look up what you say, possibly using AI intelligence. I think everybody saw the commercials from Apple with AI intelligence when you don't even remember who you meet on the street and you have to look up who is this person that's talking to me. So I think there are things that belong to us, like our tone, how we talk, how we laugh, and how we craft this social engagement that you can't hand over to an AI. Because it looks good the first time you use it. You're like, okay, this sounds smarter than I do. And then you're using it 5 times a day, 50 times a day. And then you're fully reliant because you don't trust yourself anymore.
Interesting point. Greg, I bet you got something to say about that.
Yeah. So how does a marketer or a brand, a retailer, whatever, strike the right balance? How do they get the benefits of what AI brings to the table without sacrificing these uniquely human muscles, attributes, traits, behaviors, capabilities that in an AI age do set people apart? And at the end of the day, the old adage of people do business with people, right? So much of the humanity gets stripped out of the marketing process, not just because of AI, but because of the way for many, many companies, like it's just everything purely data-driven. And I believe in data-driven decision-making, but there's also value in the softer stuff sometimes, going with your gut, right? So how do brands strike that right balance and stand apart in an age where anyone can just turn on the AI slop, so to speak, and reach lots and lots of people for next to nothing?
I think research, doing the research, getting to know your customer, getting to know what they're about. Sometimes we get marketing campaigns that are tone deaf. They don't know who we are. They're not tailoring it at all.
I've written a few of those.
That's the beauty of AI. AI can be tailored specifically to each of your customers, target when they're likely to buy, when they're not likely to buy. So I think having that personalization come in, that's how we look at it. We look at our potential customers with a very in-depth approach. We research, we look what they do, what they've done in the past, what they're likely to do, what would make us stand out as a potential collaborator. And I think that's what we liked when going to the store and buying a shirt. It was a shirt that was relevant to the time. It was tailored to fit you for 5 years. It would last. It would be something that would be with you for a very long time. But now everything has to be instant. Instant news that's not fast checked. Instant fashion that you wear it and you throw it out. So I think there needs to be this going back to basics. Let's know the customer, what they want, what they need, and be with them for the long run, not just for now.
Yeah.
And
Now,
then
just for my own self to be clear, I've been wearing this same stupid fleece for about 15 years, just so we
Right.
know that. I
What's
wanted
that?
to go
There's
to
a
your
There's a bullet in your collar, by the way.
It's not just the collar. I want to kind of dig into your point about instant news, not fact checked. And as we've already hit on, the web is getting worse in that regard, right? How do you, from your perspective, clearly digital literacy, media literacy, AI literacy are important news skills for a lot of people, but important skills in this day and age. And I know this isn't necessarily your area, but it relates very closely to your area of trust and whatnot. How do you help the average consumer build those literacies so that they are not as taken by misinformation, disinformation, fake reviews, fake news, and all that kind of stuff?
First of all, everything that's online needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Let's just say that. No need to be enraged at everything you read. Second of all, the difference between misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation has the intent to mislead you. That's how it starts. Disinformation. Oh no, wait. The other
Yeah.
way around.
Other way around. Yeah.
Disinformation is intended to mislead you. That's how it starts, with the intent.
Yeah.
Disinformation, it's just getting facts wrong. There
Right.
might not be no malicious
Right.
intent there. So first, when a news break, when something happens, you have to look at it with a grain of salt and fact check it. Unfortunately, that's where it's at. You'd be surprised how many times Steven or I read the news and we go to each other and say, hey, look what happened on the news. And we give each other side-eyed. There's a lot of that going. I'm sure that happened. Are you 100% sure? And that goes to where you get your news and where you get your facts. Like if you get them from TikTok, like
Shame on you. Yeah.
I think there's this understanding of if you read it online, you have to fact check. There's a lot of news stations that do fact check and do their due diligence. But even then, you have to fact check and you have to double check and you have to stop getting enraged at everything you read online. What do
Yeah.
you even?
Yes, I think so as well. The one thing I will say on top of that is that we were kind of able to figure out when news articles are written with, not necessarily news articles, but things on the internet, right, are written with the express intent of spreading misinformation. Again, there's a couple of linguistic properties that you'd use. You basically try to convince the person reading that article that there's no need to fact check, that the article contains all of the information that you require to make an informed decision. So that's basically through the use of a butting language style where you try to assert things, but also through a little bit of clownishness. So you mix the adversarial bit in the news with a little bit of levity. And that seems to be what all of the misinformation articles have in common. But that being said, I agree. Like, you got to fact check pretty much everything you read.
So much to say about this, just as a former journalist and coming from that family side. But one quick question for you, but I don't want to get into the rant. Steven, this technological ability to hack these patterns, is that the kind of core DNA behind Sleep View?
Pretty much, yeah. So our ability to kind of identify that sort of linguistic pattern is what we mostly do. We even have, very excited about, managed to file a provisional patent.
That's good. That's really good.
Yeah.
So I know you guys have applied this technology towards reviewers as your first kind of beachhead, if you would, or one of your beachhead. But do you see this being, if somebody wanted to come to you and say, okay, we really want to discern when somebody's throwing a bot at us, even hypothetically a political party or somebody that's consuming a lot of news, or an aggregator, if you would, because we do know that there's actually fewer news sources. There's a lot of aggregation going on. Is this something that can be applied in different ways?
Go for it.
I think so, yes. Sorry, I'll let you speak.
No, go for it.
Yeah, certainly. We absolutely want to work with anybody that finds this useful. We talked about ads before, so that's where I think or they can make an impact, right? If you have brands that are using fake reviews, they're not going to spend as much on ads. So that's something where our tech can help. If we detect a lot of, especially when you're launching a product, when you're just beginning, if you're using fake reviews to prop yourself up in a recommendation system, you're not going to want to spend as much on making sure that you get top positioning with ads. And that kind of brings the whole marketplace down, right? It's not just the fact that you're not spending ads, it's that you're actually ads work by bidding, right? So if there's less demand, there's an overall less bidding price for an ad. So the entire system gets thrown off. With news aggregators, again, we can kind of help them out, identify when articles are written in a certain way that doesn't try to inform, but rather tries to kind of make it feel in a certain way. So absolutely, we want to work with anybody that would need this tech.
What about the other side of the sort of the buy-sell equation, I guess? Not the folks who are running ads and maybe losing revenue, the networks, or not the, let's say, a retailer or an aggregator or whatever. What about if I work at a big brand, I work at Coca-Cola or I work at IBM, doesn't make a difference, some big brand. How might something like this benefit me?
First of all, you would have to look at where your reviews are collected. What platforms are there? Is there synthetic content there? For example, if you look at these big brands, huge brands, they're on, for example, Trustpilot, and they all have 1.2, 1 stars. It's a massive attack on their product and their integrity. And if you look at the reviews and we analyze our reviews with our solution, we can see that it's mostly fraudulent content. So I think even if you don't collect reviews or customer input or customer testimonials on your website, your brand is still at risk for brands that do hold reviews for your product. And we're not looking only at reviews, we're looking at audio, video, and text and photos as well. So even if you have an AI influencers that's created specifically to target or to prop up your brand, we would be able to look at that as well and say, wait a minute, is this AI generated? And the impact and the social impact of that are at a huge scale. But it's just
Then
people owning up to not need not what needs to happen next or what has already happened. Even if the FTC has came out with you can't have fake reviews or fraudulent synthetic content on your platform, the content is there. So until platforms own up to, wait a minute, we need to clean house, get this content out of here, even if that does mean coming out to users and saying, well, you've been influenced maliciously for years by our platform, and now we're taking a stance. So there's this big question of how do we clean house now and what do we do next?
Very cool.
the other side of the equation as well is, as a big brand, right? You are using most likely reviews to figure out what to do next. How do I evolve my products and what do I provide to people so they are happy with the brand? If a large enough proportion of the reviews are fake, then you don't really necessarily know if you're kind of appeasing your customers or what the algorithm learned from the internet. AI feeding AI, and then ended up like a sort of a almost like a reinforcement loop where everybody ends up doing the exact same thing. So we can also help them out by weeding out the fake reviews so that they get authentic customer opinions.
Right. I think about these examples of the two rival, I don't know, bagel shops on Main Street, and Bagel Shop B is writing 1-star negative reviews about Bagel Shop A, right? And skewing how they show up on Google reviews or whatever. Obviously now this could happen at scale, right? At a massive scale. You can have Pepsi bombing Amazon with negative Coke reviews and vice versa. Not that Pepsi or Coke would do that, but you know what I mean, right? And the ability for the brand that's impacted by that kind of a narrative attack to be able to go in and identify the fake reviews and potentially work with the platform or whatever to take some action about it is at least potentially a good opportunity to correct that kind of stuff.
Well, the big thing we're seeing lately is, for example, for Google reviews, Google has released Gemini that looks
Right.
at all reviews and creates a small narrative. But it's always a positive narrative. It's like they're pushing aside the negative aspects and saying, no, there wasn't a mouse on the floor. It's fine. The food is tasty. So change is happening, but we need to look at the full impact, not necessarily just dusting it under the rug with mouse and all and saying, no, everything's fine. It's
Yeah.
actually owning up to the risks and the damage that's been done so far and moving forward with trust.
Very cool. I think we asked a wrap-up question way early in the podcast. It's just the way the conversation transpired, but I'm kind of wondering, maybe this is a better way to wrap it. Where do you guys see this whole ecosystem balancing out? I mean, I think we're still in that very early stage of AI where we're seeing people starting to use it en masse or at scale. And we're just learning about some of the negative impacts and the positive impact. Um, where do you see this all kind of landing from an equilibrium standpoint?
From my perspective, I think people are using it, but they're not customizing it to their needs. It's a trend with absolutely everything. You start using it. It takes us a few stumbles to figure out what works for you, how you can still hear your voice through the AI, and how AI can be sprinkled in here and there rather than just put on a plate and served to the masses. I think we're going to see AI get better with its offering, its tailoring to who it serves, and maybe a seamless integration. I'm
David?
excited for it.
Yeah.
Very cool.
I'm super excited as well. I mean, from our experiments with AI, it just helps you be very, very productive, right? And I think that's how the balancing out is going to happen. It's going to help people become incredibly productive and be able to scale their expertise in ways that were just not possible before. Let's say you're someone that's really good at reading Form 10Qs, for instance, from public companies, right? You can distill that knowledge into an AI and then have, instead of having like a very long time, like a 6-month onboarding for new people, for juniors, you can have them use the AI and become productive immediately and learn what makes that AI kind of able to read a thing too effectively, right? So it's just this ability to kind of get knowledge in a very scalable way that I think is going to make a massive impact on the market.
Very cool. Greg, last thought?
Very good. I think I would concur with a lot of those things, obviously. I think what will be interesting, I don't have an answer on it necessarily, but what will be interesting will be how the population, let's say, settles out in terms of how it responds to AI generated stuff and where it draws the line between good AI and badly used AI, and to what extent that's going to potentially, to Ann Hanley's point, to bring us back to the early part of the conversation, tilt people back towards more human generated content, more true human connection, and where people will find that the AI generated stuff, the properly well done AI generated stuff is good enough, right? And that there will be a balance of those things in the marketplace, obviously, where we'll use the technology for good. We will learn to deal with the technology for bad, hopefully. And then somewhere on the third leg of that stool, really kind of come to value and rely on the more human stuff where it's appropriate. Your thoughts, Jeffrey?
I just anticipate people getting wise to it, where they'll just start assuming that they'll assume that everything's fake. And I think, unfortunately, the human condition tends to move in that direction, where rather than I'm going to take the time to discern those good interviews or the good reviews from the bad reviews. Yeah, brands that use this on a larger scale are going to be poorly seen. It's funny, we were talking earlier, and I won't mention the brand name, but there's an organization that's always hustling. Every time you talk with them, you cringe laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. Every time you talk to them, every time you see them, every time they're advertising in person, remote, digitally, general, personalized, it's a hustle, it's a sale. And it's gotten to the point where anytime you see their name, you just feel like, okay, here it comes, right? And that's not to say that there aren't good people that are working there actually oriented towards you and what you need and are listening, but the brand is polluted. And I think that's what we're probably looking at is the winners are going to be the ones that realize that the itch is not worth the scratch.
Yep. I think you pointed out something absolutely instrumental. We need to view our digital landscape as polluted or unpolluted. And right now, it is polluted, but steps are
man.
taking in the right direction to muffle the noise and just let the people have what they want.
Real quick, really curious. When was the last time you guys bought something off of social networks? Anybody?
I've never been on social media. I never liked anything. I never had a social media account. The way I was introduced to social media back when poor Nina was in high school was, it's this thing, you put pictures of you and your family and people, strangers see it and comment on it. I was like, no,
That's terrible.
I'm still terrified of it. I don't know how people are doing it. I think you need to be a psychological warrior to be on there. The things you hear, my God.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Well, Craig, when was the last time you were a sucker and bought something?
I don't know that I've ever bought anything based on social
Damn, I'm
media.
the only fool here. I'm like the idiot.
Maybe I have. And I've certainly been suckered into buying things from digital advertising, but I'm trying to think about something, a sponsored thing on Instagram or whatever. I can't think of anything, although I'm sometimes tempted. What was the last thing you bought, Geoff?
Wallet. I bought a wallet. Look, man, mine's getting pretty rad. Look, I need a new wallet.
Got a wallet? Is that what that is?
Yeah, I carry one of those smaller wallets. I bought one of those cool mechanical wallets because I'm clearly middle-aged and having some sort of a crisis and need something hipper than my old wallet.
Well, I don't think you'll ever get robbed, Geoff. Pull that. Keep it.
It was either the Lamborghini or the Instagram advertised wallet. You went with the wallet.
Yeah. It was way too primitive. They did have to research whether the brand was good or not, though. So, all right. Very good. I think I completely lampooned the whole thing right there. I'm sorry. I apologize to our listeners. Greg, should you take us out after I thank the bosses for their time?
Sure thing.
Well, thank you both. How do people find you?
We are on LinkedIn, Mendit.ai. You can find our website, Mendit.ai. We like going to events in the Northwest. So whenever there's AI speak, we're usually going to be there. We like to talk AI, so don't be shy. Come up to us, start the conversation, either in person or on LinkedIn. And we're excited.
There you go.
All right, awesome. So you heard it there. Be sure to check out Mendit.ai. Be sure to reach out to Steven and or Nina. If any of this sounds interesting, like your brand may be affected by AI-generated content that is not appropriate, not on the up and up, or if you have an opportunity to do something with AI content and you think Mendit.ai may be able to help you, please check them out. In the meantime, thanks for joining us, everybody. Again, as I said at the beginning, I will say it again at the end. Be sure to subscribe, to share, to like, to love, to link, to review. Honest, human-generated reviews only. I can guarantee you the two people who have so far reviewed our show have done so legitimately because it was just Geoff and me. We do appreciate, obviously, the real live listening humans who do review the show and do spread the word. Thank you very much, everybody. We will be back in another couple of weeks with another great episode. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
guys.
Thank
Bye.
you.